Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Robbie Barwick from the Australian Citizens Party. I'm here today with this wonderful group of people because we're flying the flag to support whistleblowers and political prisoners in Australia who tend to overlap. Because we have a hero in prison at the moment named David McBride, who is the only Australian to have faced any charges as a result of blowing the whistle on Afghan war crimes, which have been confirmed. The inquiry confirmed there were 39 killings in 25 incidences. The soldiers and their commanding officers who are responsible for those killings have not faced any justice, but the man who blew the whistle, so that we know about this terrible incident in Australian history, this terrible event, this terrible episode, is in jail, and is in jail in an absolute travesty of justice. And he's in jail because this man, the Attorney-General of Australia, Mark Dreyfus, refused to lift a finger and declare what David McBride did was in the public interest. If he decides it's in the public interest, then public interest protections apply, and David McBride would not be in jail. He refused to do that, and so an Australian hero is now in jail. An Australian hero who's a friend of us, who was a champion of Julian Assange, and tirelessly attended all the Julian Assange events, which eventually helped get Julian Assange out of jail in the UK. But he's now rotting in jail for only doing the right thing. And as Australians, you can't walk past this and just ignore it. This is our country. This is not some despotic country on the other side of the world we keep hearing about. This is our country. It is becoming despotic. The political prisoner I want to talk about, though, is a slightly more obscure case that everybody should be up in arms about, and that is Daniel Duggan. Daniel Duggan is an Australian citizen who used to be an American citizen. He was a Navy Top Gun. Tom Cruise is an actor. This guy's the real deal. He was a Navy Top Gun. But he fell in love with an Australian woman. He moved to Australia. He became a naturalised Australian citizen, and he has never broken any laws in Australia. But in 2017, he was indicted by people in the Trump administration who decided that they want to drag our country into a war with China, our number one trading partner, the country we make more money from than any other country in the world makes from China. We enjoy the most beneficial trade relationship with China of any country in the world. But Americans decided they want to drag us into a war with China. And they then scapegoated Daniel Duggan because in 2012, he went to South Africa and helped train Chinese pilots, or test pilots, who are pilots that train other pilots. He did it for a few months. At the time he did it, he did not train Chinese military pilots, he just trained Chinese pilots. He did not think twice about it. We're not at war with China. Nobody was talking about war with China. Two years after this, the President of China came and addressed our Parliament, for crying out loud, at Tony Abbott's invitation. Yet 5 years later, because of the United States, suddenly they want to scapegoat this guy. So in 2022, when he was dropping his kids off at school, he was arrested by the Australian Federal Police in ASIO. He was put into prison in Australia. He's been in there for 2 years and 2 months. He has not broken any crimes, any laws in Australia. He has not committed any crimes in Australia. Let me reiterate, none. But they have put him in prison here because the Americans have a request to extradite him. The problem for the Americans, and for Attorney-General Mark Dreyfus, who has to approve this, is that under our extradition treaty with the United States, you can only extradite someone if the crime is a crime in both countries. It's called dual criminality. And what he is accused of by the Americans is not a crime in Australia. Yet even knowing that, this man has dragged out this process so that Daniel Duggan, as an innocent man, has been in jail for 2 years and 2 months, and it has destroyed Daniel Duggan's family. He has 6 children. He has a wife named Supreme Duggan, who is a saint of a person, her whole life is now spent advocating for her husband. They are getting legal support from lawyers who are not getting paid because there's no money to pay them. The Duggans tried to sell their property so that they could fund a legal defence, and it was a property in the Southern Highlands of New South Wales that they had a contract to sell for $4.2 million that would have funded any legal defence. And the day before, the Americans took that sale to court and got it frozen as proceeds of crime. So that even though the Duggans are up against the most powerful government in the world, that government does not want them fighting on a level legal playing field. That government is making them fight with their hands tied behind their back while they torture their husband and father in prison. The younger Duggan children are now having emotional problems, psychological problems, behavioural problems because of what they've had to experience because of what their father is going through. They're now facing their third Christmas without their father because this gentleman, Mark Dreyfus, the Attorney-General of Australia, has not made a decision one way or another about whether to extradite him. Now the fact he hasn't made a decision shows you that he knows it's not a black and white case. He is on very shaky legal ground to make this decision. The other side of that equation is America demanding it. And because when America demands something, Australia jumps first and then says how high. That's the relationship our country has with the United States. And our government will scapegoat anybody. No Australian is safe while we are so subservient to this foreign power that is hell-bent on taking us to war. So think long and hard about that. And we have, as a fellow Australians to the Duggans, we are responsible for taking up the cause of this family and demanding this government do the right thing and let him go home to his family. We need to have the same approach with David McBride, of course. Demand that the government exonerate David McBride and get him out of prison. Because as Martin Luther King famously said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. What I've told you is two things happening in our country. This is not you stumbling across an information table outside of a shopping centre where some well-meaning young people are telling you about atrocities that are happening in other parts of the world. This is in our country. And we can do something about it by forcing the Australian government to do the right thing. And in this case, it's this man, Mark Dreyfus, the Attorney-General, has the legal power to let Dan Duggan go.
And protect Australia's sovereignty.
Protect our sovereignty, because you can't protect our sovereignty if you're not going to protect our citizens. By the way, America would not tolerate anyone doing this to any one of their citizens ever. They apply the old Roman law. Touch a Roman anywhere and you're dead. But we are allowing them to do it to our citizens. This is an outrage, this is a travesty, this is an injustice, and every Australian should be up in arms and join the fight to do something about it. What you can do is attend these Thursday events in front of Mark Dreyfus's office. Call Mark Dreyfus's office, write to Mark Dreyfus, and keep the pressure on him to let Dan Duggan go home to his family and get David McBride out of prison. Thank you very much.